So we want to talk about, or begin to talk about math in this class. Now, first of all, I don't want anybody to think you are in an area where somebody is going to judge you about your math skills or your lack thereof. It is okay. I get it. If there is one area where we are terribly deficient in how we teach people in this country, it is math. I have never in all my life seen a greater uproar over nothing than the uproar over Common Core. And what you see is mostly a country full of people who have no earthly idea how to do math saying, they should teach this shit the way they taught it to me. Well, that did a great job, right? Because you can't do it yourself. The very fact that you can't help your fourth grader do their math homework is proof positive that you learned in a pretty terrible way. If you disagree with that, I'm sorry. It is the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts. But if you will accept that math is not in and of itself an intimidating thing, I promise you we will get through it. One of the things I like to try to do with math is to change the way you look at it, okay? We're going to do a lot of visual math in this class because people can visualize things oftentimes when they can't accept it in any other way. How many of you loved algebra? Okay. Those of you that love algebra will not have a hard time with the math in this class. How many of you did not like algebra? I'm teaching to you. And it's not that I don't love you people. In fact, I used to be one. When I started teaching this stuff, I was the guy who was up here and I was like, okay, well, you know, with property taxes, it's the assessed value times the rate equals the tax bill. And so I would sit here and say, well, you know, if they're asking for the assessed value, how would you solve for that? Well, they multiplied here, so that means you got to do it. No, forget all that. Because those of you that hate algebra tuned me out as soon as I started writing the formula on the board, right? I teach math in a visual way because it allows you to accept it without having to feel like you're doing math. That's the beauty of doing it visually. And also, when you get 3 hours into a 4-hour test, your brain is mush. You're going to forget how to do the most simple of things. I always tell people to park with their car aimed toward home because you won't remember which way to go when you walk out of the exam. And that's very true. This is a really, I mean, it's a tough process, that exam. So they're going to be, math is going to be a challenge for some of you, but we can help alleviate that. Now, I've given you a whole packet full of formulas. They don't look like formulas because they're all in circles. Some people call this circle math. I call them T-bars. Some people call it circle math. It doesn't matter to me which one you call them, but I've given them to you and I printed them full size so you have them all blown up. Here is one of your assignments for the class. And specifically for this week, you're going to take and you're going to mark the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. And your assignment, one of your assignments for homework this week is to memorize the first 6 of these. Here's the wonderful thing about these formulas. You don't have to know any math to memorize these formulas. Would you agree with that? You memorize 3 things in a circle without knowing how to do math.
Yes.
I would say so. Make yourself flashcards. Make yourself Quizlets with them if you want to. Heck, you kind of already have flashcards here in front of you, don't you? Couldn't you cut this in half and, you know, and you got kind of a flashcard. On one side this is property taxation, on the other side there's the formula for it. Memorize those first 6. Now we're going to talk today about how to apply them, but I want you to memorize them because one of the things you're going to get in the habit of in this class is as soon as you see a math question, before you pick up a calculator, before you do anything else, you're going to write down the formula that you're going to use to get the answer. Because one of the biggest traditional difficulties that people have with the math in this class is that they give you much more information than you actually need to answer the question. If you need 3 numbers, they give you 12. So guess what the challenge is of the question? Is the challenge doing the math, or is the challenge knowing which three numbers to work with? The challenge is knowing which three numbers to work with. If you pick up a calculator right away, guess what? You have no idea what you're doing. And do you think maybe the people making up the test have just fired those numbers into a calculator in random ways, and whatever number pops out becomes one of the answer choices on the exam? They wouldn't do anything that evil, would they? Yes, absolutely. That's exactly how they write the exam. They sit there and they say, okay, how could they combine these numbers in wrong ways in their calculator? Let us do that, and then put that as an answer choice. And so then when you fire that number in the calculator and your answer comes up as on the test, what do you think?
That's right.
It's right. It must be. It's on the test. It has to be. Folks, the math is going to be your savior on this test. I know some of you hate math. You're going to learn to love it. Here's the beauty of the math on this test. 80% of this test are questions that even if you know the material, you can still get the question wrong because of the way the question's asked, because of the way they twisted it with one small word. You have a chance of getting that question wrong. The 20% of the test that's math, guess what? If you know it, you know it. There's no such thing as it could be one or the other in a math question. There's a right answer and there's 3 wrong answers. On these theory questions, there could be 4 right answers and you're picking which one is the most correct. The math, right, wrong. You're going to learn to embrace that. We're going to do enough work with it that hopefully you get to the point of embracing it, okay? Does that help for some of you that are a little bit scared of it? Don't be intimidated by math. Now, so let's talk about math generically in this class. Everything in this class is percentage based. Nearly everything, every math we do is percentage based in this class. So I know this is sort of a remedial math lesson. If you don't need it, tune me out. If you do, this is what it's for. We need to talk about what a percentage is. A percentage, percent. How many cents are in a dollar? 100. Percent literally translates to per 100, right? So no matter what you're talking about, if you say 5%, what you're saying is that for every 5 of those, you've got what? I mean, for every 100 of those, you've got 5, right? I can't even talk about it today. So if I said that I was going to take 10% of Kelly's goldfish out of this bag, I'm not. Don't get it. Y'all didn't see that look. Holy moly. God, I need to get somebody else as an example here. Like flames coming out here. See, just because that, the percentage goes up. If I was going to take 15% of Kelly's goldfish out of this bag, what I am saying is that for every 100 goldfish in the bag, I'm going to eat how many of them? 15. 15. Does that make sense? That's all a percentage is. It's just taking any other number and breaking it down into smaller pieces. And we do that all the time. As a matter of fact, you better get comfortable with percentages. How are we compensated as real estate brokers? The percentage of the sales price of things, right? You will learn how to calculate 6% of something in your sleep. I'm not saying why you'll know how to calculate 6. You can fire any number at me and I can tell you what 6% of it is because that's what my paycheck looks like. It's amazing how you learn to do that math. But everything we do in this class is based on percentages. So therefore, how many of you have your calculator? Brought your calculator. All right. Hopefully all of you do. If you don't, make sure you bring it next week. Find the percent button on there. Does everybody know what the percent button looks like on your calculator? This will be your friend. Now, for some of you, this will be a lesson in learning how to use a calculator. Those of you who are millennials, you don't know what this thing is, right? Because you've always had one of these in your pocket. And it has one on there, right? Personally, it takes me 20 minutes to find mine that's on here, but there's one there. This is what you can use on the test though. And these work differently. How many of you have used the one on your phone and notice it works a little bit differently? They're different things. It doesn't work the same. The percent button is one of those things. Okay, so everybody pay attention. The percent button is the equals button. You do not, those of you who don't know how to use a calculator, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing how to use it, make sure you understand that. When you press the percent button, you do not then press the equals button after it. Did everybody hear what I just said? So whenever I tell you to type in and press the percent button, what are you not going to press after that? Equals button. Because if you do that, it will recalculate it over again and you will have the wrong answer. Okay? So when you press the percent button, that's like pressing the equal button all at the same time. Are we good with that? The other thing is, and this will be the hard thing for some of you to swallow, I'm going to beg of you to please use the percent button. Please don't try to move the decimal, okay? And here's the reason why, and I will tell you from my perspective as a reformed decimal mover, because this is the way I use it. How many of you, when you change percentages, you move them, you move the decimals, right? That's why they put a percent button on the calculator, so you don't have to do that. The good thing is, this never forgets how many decimals to move it. When you start doing it yourself, sometimes you don't move it the right number. Sometimes you move it 1 instead of 2. Sometimes you don't move it all. Sometimes you look at that number and think that has to be the right number and you don't move it at all because, so like for example, I see this with people who move decimals. You know, later in the class we'll talk about like percentage gain and loss, you know, and you'll have a question where somebody will say, well, they invested $20,000 and they sold the property for $100,000. Well, if I invest $20,000 and I sell the property for $100,000, how much profit did I make? $80,000, right? I invested 20, I sold it for 100, I profited 80. Does everybody agree with me on that? We okay on that? So you might want to figure out what your profit is on that transaction. So some people, and I'll show you how to set the math up later in the class. You don't need to know this now, so don't write it down. The math is going to be, that's $80,000 divided by $20,000. Divided by $20,000. And when you punch that into your calculator, you know what you get as an answer? 4. You know what's going to be an answer choice on the exam? You know what's not the right answer? 4. Because it's actually 400%. Because we will look at that number and go, oh, 4 is a reasonable number, right? Or sometimes you get a number that's the opposite way. You get like 0.2 and you see 0.2% on the exam. And it's actually not 0.2, it's 20%. And those of you that move decimals, you'll get talked into not doing it or doing it at the wrong times. I've just seen this from experience. I'm not saying you can't move decimals. I have every faith that you can. I'm just saying if you can eliminate a source of potential error, why won't you? Let's just go ahead and get the silly mistakes out as much as we possibly can. That's why I said we need a calculator that has a percent button on it. So, with that being said, I'm going to write down for you, and I'm going to talk you through this. Before we even talk about a T-bar, I just want to quickly establish doing some generic sort of math with the calculator. So, I want you to take your calculator, and I'm going to write down some questions here, and you're going to go through them and punch them in. But before you start, let me just write a couple of them down. All right, so number 1, we want to say 18% of $350,000. Number 2, 72% of $400,000. All right. So let's talk about how you punch things into a calculator. First of all, whenever you're dealing with percentages, some of you struggle with math, you might want to put this in your notes. The word of means multiply. Whenever you're dealing with percentage-based math, anywhere you see the word of, you know what you can substitute for it? Multiply. So when I say 18% of $350,000, I can change that of into a multiplication symbol. Is everybody with me so far on that? Yeah. Now there's one more thing you need to know before you can punch that into your calculator. Your calculator is not very smart. Remember, this is like technology from when I was a kid. It's a long time ago, all right? This is old technology. It will not take the percentage first. You have to put the real number in there first. So, if I'm putting this into a form I can punch into a calculator, I said I was going to change the word of into what? Multiply. So that's multiply, but what I can't do is put the percentage first. So what am I going to actually type into the calculator? $350,000 times 18%. What do we come up with? 63,000. Is there anybody that punched that in their calculator and did not get $63,000 right there? You okay, Carolyn?
I got 63.
You got 63. Did you move the decimal and then hit the percent button? Did you type 0.18%? Try it again.
Times 18%. Now it's different.
Okay, all right. We'll assume it was the calculator.
It was user error. Okay. 63,000.
Okay? We all right with this?
Yeah.
So do the second one. Go ahead on your own.
So always enter the non-percent
The
number.
non-percent number first. That's exactly right. And then type it. So what I would do with that is write it out before I start typing it, especially until you get comfortable doing this, right? So write out exactly how you're going to type it into the calculator.
Does that say 72?
72%.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my penmanship is terrible. I should have been a serial killer or a doctor. One of the two. So I wrote down up here how you would type that into your calculator. It's $400,000 times what? 72%. And what do we come up with for that? 288? $288,000. Okay? That is 72% of $400,000. Can you do that? Now, think about how powerful that is. Because anytime you read a question, and you can simply make it into a statement of, well, this is 8% of that number, you know exactly what to type in your calculator back. Can't you write that down on a piece of paper? When you're saying it in your head, can't you write down, okay, well, it's going to be 15% of this number. Well, can't you write down 15% of that number, and then change the of into a multiplication and flop them? Put the real number first and the percentage second, and you've got it written exactly as you need to type it into the calculator. You see how what a powerful tool something as simple as that can be with helping you get the right answer?
Like decoding.
It is like decoding because you're training your brain to think in the way that the test wants you to think. That's the whole goal here, right? Everybody with me so far? Now, I want to have a little bit of a broader discussion about percentages because one of the other things that we can do with percentages, which is really cool, is increase or decrease numbers by some percentage. In order to do that, we need to think of what percentages we start with. I always think of a pie chart, probably because I like eating pie. That's probably the biggest relationship there. When I think of a pie chart, though, what percentage am I thinking of? 100%. 100% is always our starting point, right? Everybody agrees that when we start with the whole pie, we have 100% of the pie, correct? Now, a lot of times they will tell us that something has increased by this percent. Can property increase in value? Yes. And if it does, do they usually tell us it increased by some percent? Things went up by 8% in value. Something appreciated by 3%. That just means it went up by 3%, correct? I bet you can do this math. I bet you can do it, and I bet you it'll be easier than you ever thought it possible. If something appreciates by 3%, that sounds fancy. If something goes up by 3%, that sounds less fancy, correct? If something starts at 100 and goes up by 3, does that sound even less fancy? Because anytime something does a percentage increase or decrease, what does it always start at? 100. They always start at 100. So, if something appreciates in value by 3%, it goes up, starting from 100, by what? 3. Can you add 100 plus 3? I bet most of you can do that, right? So, if we get a 3% appreciation on a $250,000 home. How many of you, before we started this discussion, would have seen that and said, I have no idea what to do with that? You can be honest. Is there anybody who would have, and that's fine. It's okay. Because here's my goal. In the next 2 minutes, you're going to see that and you're going to, that's easy. What did we start with? What percentage did we start with? 100%. And which way do we go? Up or down? Up. By how much? 3%. So what's 100 plus 3? 100. Write down 103% of, what number did we start with? $250,000. Now based on what we said earlier, can we swap that around? What do we type in the calculator? $250,000 times 103%. We just appreciated that house by 3%. So what's the new value of that home? $257,500. Did that help?
Yes. Amazing.
Math is not that difficult. It's how you've been presented math your whole life that makes it that difficult. Can we handle that?
And if it was decreased, you would just subtract.
Let's do one. Tara said, what if it was depreciation? So, let's say we have a home valued at $698,500 has depreciated by 19%. What is the new value?
This is where I struggled. If I had known this,
Okay? So let's walk me through it. What percentage did we start at here with this house? 100, because we always do start. That's always the starting point, correct? And if we started at 100, if we're depreciating, are we going up in value or down in value? Down. So is that like a plus or a minus? Minus. That looks like a minus to me. Minus what? 19. Now, I wouldn't say percent. I would just say 19. Because if you type 19% in your calculator, you can get a funky answer, right? What's 100 minus 19? 81. So now let me restate that in a way I can type it in my calculator, right? I'm just going to say 81% of, what was our starting point?
6,985.
698,500. And again, if I put the first number, the real number first, 698,500 times what? 81%. You just appreciated that property. 698,500 times 81%. 565,785 is the new value of that property. Percentage increases and decreases are that straightforward. Now, some of you have done it in two pieces. You can do it the long way if you want to, that's okay. The long way would be to say, okay, I'm going to take 19% of 698,500, and then I'm going to subtract that number from 698,500. That's just doing in two steps what I did in one. It doesn't matter to me which way you do it. I tend to think starting at 100% and working up or down from there just makes more sense logically for most people. And so that's the way I show it to you. But you're not wrong doing it that way. I don't want to think you're wrong if you're doing it that way. Do I have anybody that is feeling uncomfortable?
May I see your answer once again?
Yes.
Just want to make sure I'm on the right page. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good. How are we feeling about that? Okay? See, I think it's important to have this discussion about the basics of what we're going to be doing with percentages before we get into real estate specific math. Because if we just jump into real estate specific math and you're lost on the percentages, you get so uptight you can't learn the real estate stuff because you're focused on the basic math of it, okay? So I want everybody to kind of have a comfort level with the basic math here. All right, we good with that? Why don't we do this? I'm going to write down 3 or 4 up here, and we'll let you quickly do them on your own, and then I will write the answer. I'll blank the screen and write the answers and give you about a minute to calculate and make sure you're okay. How about that? I'm going to read them to you real quick. The number 1 is just increase 280, so you make sure you can read my writing. Number 1 is increase $280,000 by 12%. Number 2 is decrease $542,000 by 6%. And number 3 is calculate the amount of cash a seller gets selling their home for $200,000, paying a 6% commission. Okay, so those are the 3 I want you to work on real quickly. You let me know when you've got them written down so I can blank this out. Now blanket.
Oh, copy them first. Sorry. I'm still writing. 1 second.
1 second.
I have the first 2.
You can.
Oh,
You wanna know what's the seller of it?
oh, okay, well, that's pretty good.
We ready to look at them?
Yes, sir.
Number one, increase $280,000 by 12%. How many of you wrote 280,000 times 112%? I hope everybody did. And if you did you get $313,600?
Yes.
We feel all right about that one?
Yes.
All right. Then how about number two? Decrease $542,000 by 6%. Did we write down 542,000 times 94%?
Yes.
And that it gives you 509,480, right? Then I got all hard on you on number three. But did I really?
No.
Folks, I gave you the same concept tied up in a different package. Isn't number three just reduce $200,000 by 6%?
Yep.
Because we're asking you, what does the seller get after selling their house if they pay out 6%? Well, if they started with 100% and they paid out 6%, what are they left with? 94. All you have to do is write down $200,000 times 94%, and I come up with $188,000. Same exact concept. Just repeat it over. How we feel? Good? Good. Then we're ready to look at some real estate math then. Alright? See, you're excited about it now. Or at least you're pretending to be. I'll take that. Okay. So, let's talk about our friend, the T-bar here.
I did it.
By the way, you have to be from my generation to know who that one is. If you don't talk to me about it. I pity the fool who does not know who that is. You really, if you are too young that you do not know who this person is, you missed out on a great time to be alive. That's all I can say. All right. So the T-bar. The T, there's only two? Oh, there's a bunch, trust me. I guarantee you there's a bunch. They won't tell the truth about it, but there's a bunch out there who have no idea what we're talking about now. So I do have somebody in my day pre-license class, and I had to look 3 times at his ID when he gave it to me on day 1. He was born in 2000. And I literally and truthfully looked at him and said, I have clothes older than you. And they still fit. So this is ridiculous. You know, born in 2000. Because you don't have to be 18 to take the class, you have to be 18 to get the license. He turns 18 in February.
Wow, being very proactive.
He is very proactive, and I want to beat him every time I say this. It just blows my mind. It blows me away. All right. So now we talk about how old I am. Let's talk about the T-bar. So, the T-bar is just a visual representation of a formula. We're going to get to this property tax formula here, but this is just an example of a common formula put into a T-bar format. So let's talk about what the format does. Okay? When you look at a T-bar, and when they're in circles on your formula packet, it's the same thing. It's the same T, it's just got a circle drawn around it, correct? And I'll talk to you about why I draw the circle. That's a visual clue and reminder as well. We'll talk about the circle in just a second. But when you look at any formula that's put into a T-bar format, any one thing that you're trying to solve for can be solved just by looking at what the relationship is between the other two things. Okay? So, when things are side by side, what does it say you're going to do with those two things? You multiply them. So the correct way to read this T-bar is area is equal to what? length times width, because they're the only two things that we're left with. When we take area out of the picture, if that's what we're looking for, I'm trying to look for the area. They want me to calculate area, so area equals, that's the way you start writing, area equals. We're only left with two other things, right? So they're either going to be multiplied or divided. All you're looking for now is, are they side by side or are they top and bottom? Because if they're up and down, top and bottom, you're going to divide. If they're side by side, you're going to do what? You're going to multiply. It puts that formula into visual format. So quickly, without thinking about it, what does length equal?
Area divided by width.
Area divided by width, because it's the only two things you're left with, and since it's top and bottom, it must be what? Division. Do you see how that's very helpful? Because it takes a formula and it instantly solves it for you. So when you see that you're doing, for example, a property tax formula, if you look in your packet here, that's the first formula you have here, right? And I'm going to throw that up here. It's right there. So when you look at this formula, tell me what property tax, how to calculate a property tax bill, and you've never done this before. How do you do it? Assessed value times the North Carolina tax rate. Easy. Because the T-bar said it was, right? So now, here's your goal. Can you memorize that? Can you memorize that property tax bills on the top, assessed value, and tax rate are on the bottom? Because if you can memorize that, you can do the math of any property tax math question on this exam. That's how powerful this tool can be for you. Real quickly, assessed value. How would I calculate the assessed value? What two things are we left with? Property tax divided by the North Carolina tax rate. The North Carolina tax rate, how would I calculate it? Property tax divided by assessed value. If you can read that picture, you can do the math. It is that simple. It is that simple. That's the power of the T-bar. Does this look like something that would help you with the math?
Yeah.
Good. Good. So,
Question.
Go
As
ahead.
far as division goes, you're always going to read the top to the bottom. So.
top divided by bottom.
Okay.
Top divided by bottom. That's the way division works, right? It's the way division. And by the way, look at that percent button on your calculator. Doesn't it just kind of look like a sideways division symbol? Exactly what it is. It's one number divided by another number. That's it. And then with the percent button, what number do you think you're always dividing by?
100.
100. That's what's pre-programmed in the calculator. That's all you're doing is when you press that button, it's dividing by 100 for you. That's all the percent button does. That's the magic of it. That's it. But you don't have to remember doing it. That's why we use the percent button. Okay? So, the property tax bill formula is just property tax bill over assessed value times the North Carolina tax rate. So let's talk about the North Carolina tax rate, because that's the only thing that we haven't talked about this far, is how the rate is expressed in the state of North Carolina. So, in North Carolina, property tax rates are expressed in dollars per 100. Now, your calculator does not have a dollars per 100 button on it. Luckily for you, dollars per 100 is a very long-winded way of saying this. A dollar per 100 rate, folks, what did I say a percent was? Per 100. It's just a percentage. So, like here, where it says the North Carolina tax rate is $1.50 per 100. I don't have to do anything to it except drop the dollar sign off and stick what behind it? A percent sign. Because $1.50, 1.50 per 100 is the same as 1.50%. Do you have a percent button on the calculator? That's all there is to it. That's all. If you're making it harder than that, you're making it too hard. That's on you, not on me. I'm making it simple for you. You make it hard on yourself, okay? The North Carolina tax rate is a percentage. And you've got a percent button on your calculator. So, here's an example. It says, what's the yearly tax bill for a property with an assessed value of $220,000 in Chapel Hill, where the tax rate is $1.76 per 100. So, let's talk about how you're going to solve math questions in this class. I've already done it for you here. The first thing you're looking for is the question. Questions always have like what in front of them, right? They have question words, what or why or how or that sort of thing. Where's the question in this? What is the what? Tax bill. Stop. Biggest mistake you make in math is trying to read that whole thing and figure out what the heck to do with it. I'm going to stop as soon as I see what is the yearly tax bill. Because guess what? We only have one formula that involves tax bill. So wouldn't it be a good time to write that formula down? If they're asking you for tax bill, let's write down the formula to calculate a tax bill. Does that make sense for everybody? And that's where you draw your T-bar. You just draw it out. Before you read any further, you draw that T-bar out. So I've written down tax bill equals value times rate, assessed value times rate. Is everybody good with that formula? Now, can I go back and start to read and plug things in to my formula now? Does that make sense? What would be a good thing to write those things in, by the way? Right back in the T-bar itself, right? If you're writing it down and you draw it big enough so that you've got room to plug the numbers in, so that you can plug them right in as you read. What is the yearly tax bill? Circle tax bill. Boom. We'll circle that because that's what I'm solving for. On my T-bar, I'm circling it. What is the year? So, show you. Sometimes the telephone don't have two screens. So this is what I would be doing as I'm going through that question. I would have drawn my T-bar. Tax bill equals assessed value times rate. Okay? What is the tax bill? That's what I'm looking for. I circle it so I don't forget. For a property with an assessed value of $220,000, what do you think I'm going to do with the $220,000? Write it in. In Chapel Hill, where the tax rate is $1.76 per 100. Well, what did we say about that North Carolina tax rate? It is the same thing as a what? A percentage. So I'm going to write $1.76, but instead of putting the dollar sign there, what am I going to put behind it? A percent sign. Now, tell me what they're asking me for here. The tax bill, right? Now, read to me what the formula says I'm going to do to calculate the tax bill. I'm going to multiply $220,000 times 1.76%. Can we do that? Do we come up with $3,872, hopefully? How we feel about that? Pretty good? Okay? Here's a different example. What's the total tax rate for a property with an assessed value of 200? Well, so let's do this first. Let's do this real quickly though. I passed out a worksheet. Rather than go to that next example, what we'll do this. Pull out your, it says homework, we're going to work on it in class. Okay? Before we do this example, let's look at number one here. So on number one, everybody got one? Anybody not get it? Did somebody come in afterward? I think everybody got it. If not, let me know. Alright, so on this property taxation and acreage math homework, it says, what is the annual tax due? See, I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to read the rest of the question because I don't know what all information they're going to give me, but I do know what they're asking me for. Does that make sense? So right away, as soon as I see what is the tax due, I'm going to do what? Draw a T-bar, write the formula. Tax bill equals assessed value times rate. And again, what are they asking me to solve for here? They want to know the tax due, so the bill, right? That's what they want to know. So, now I'm going to go back and start reading and filling in. What's the annual tax due on a home with an assessed value of $282,500? So, $282,500 fill it in, right? And the ad valorem tax rate is what?
0.98.
You wouldn't say 98 cents, exactly. Don't read it like it's some foreign number from Mars, right? If you saw that on a price tag, you wouldn't say, this is 0.98. You would say, it's 98 what?
98 cents.
Cents. It's the same thing here. It's 98 cents per 100, which for us is the same thing as 0.98%. Because you just write it down exactly as it is and put a percent sign there. So 0.98%. Not 98%, not 9.8%. You leave the decimal exactly where it is. Okay? And so what am I going to type into my calculator? 282 500 times 0.98%. And when I do that, I come up with $2,768.50 for an annual tax bill. How do we feel about that number? Everybody okay with calculating that one? All right, well then why don't you work on number 2? And I'll give you a second to do that. No 6, no round. Don't round. Don't round. Rounding will be an Achilles heel later in the class, so don't do it now. There'll be a time when rounding will drive you crazy, because if I told you that $4 or $5 difference was the same answer, you look at me and say you're crazy. Well, rounding can easily throw you off. Rounding can throw you off by hundreds of square feet on an acreage math question. So just get out of the habit of rounding. It's a lot of numbers, write them down. That'd be good for you. Because I'm insane, that's why. And I don't smell smoke yet, so that's a good sign. Nobody's melting down, I hope. We ready to look at it? Okay. Ready? All right, let's take a look. What did they ask us to solve for here? The assessed value, right? They asked us to solve for this. So did you write the T-bar down? Was that the first thing you did? You wrote that T-bar down. Good. Did you circle assessed value? That's what I'm looking for. And here I just highlighted it for you. So I'm only left with 2 other things, right? So the only question now is, am I multiplying or am I dividing? And in this case, what is it? Dividing. And it's always what? Top divided by bottom. You almost have to be wanting to do it wrong, to type it wrong, because the first number you come to is the one on top, and that's the first number you need to type in the calculator, right? So top divided by bottom. So in this case, it's going to be 3850 divided by what? 1.15%. And I come up with $334,782.60 for an assessed value for that property. Anybody not come up with that number? We okay there? And you don't. And listen, First thing you need to learn is don't be embarrassed to say, I did not come up with that number. Can we all agree we're here to learn, right? Nobody's in here to judge anybody. Nobody's going to think anybody's stupid because they didn't do it, because I promise it'll be something you don't get later on in the class. So nobody ever be embarrassed to say, I didn't get that, because I don't want to leave any of you behind. And unfortunately, you're too close together. I can't get between you to look at everybody's work. Okay, so I need you to let me know when you struggle, please, because I do want to get you there. Here's why I draw it in a circle. The beauty of doing it in a circle. Can I check my math after I come up with the answer to make sure I did it correctly? The idea of it being a circle is no matter which way I combine those three numbers, I should come up with the other number, right? So now, could I go back and check my math by, say, taking this number and multiplying times that rate and making sure I get that tax bill that they gave me? That's why I draw it as a circle. It's like a reminder to you to go back and check your math. Because if you type in that, and see, you know what one of the most common math mistakes in this class is? It's not actually not knowing how to do the math. It's just typing it into the calculator wrong. We all do that. I do it all the time. I get fat-fingered myself, right? And type in the wrong number, or you're not paying attention, you type too many zeros, not enough zeros. If you go back and check your work before you look at the answers, and make sure it lines back up. So what I would do here is I would take that 334, 782, 60. It's still in your calculator. You didn't even have to punch it in, right? And do times 1.15%. And what should I end up with? 38.50. Is everybody okay with that? Is that a good way you can check yourself? Go ahead.
So I got 3849.99. Will I get that wrong?
38.49.99. We'll leave you with a penny. You're okay. I promise.
But I'm just wondering, like, on the exam, would it give
No,
those two?
no.
Okay.
Rounding will never throw you off on the exam. So I tell you not to do it. Don't worry about it. Because you're always going to be, the truth is, you're always going to be choosing the closest answer to your answer. Almost never will you see exactly your answer on the exam. Because when you start to deal with very large numbers like this, any minuscule rounding makes a big difference. You know, like, I'll give you an example. Later on in the class, when we start prorating property taxes, we'll figure out a daily rate for the property taxes, and it might be $1.28 a day. And maybe Carolyn does it, and she figures out it's $1.27 a day. No big difference, right? Well, the seller's selling it 200 days into the year. So what do you think we're going to do with that $1.28 a day? We're going to multiply it times 200. Well, if you're multiplying $1.28 a day times 200, and Carolyn's multiplying $1.27 times 200, you're going to be $2 off in your final answer, right? They're still both right. They're still both right. Because there's not going to be an answer on the exam where rounding could make that much of a difference. I tell you not to round because not rounding will give you the truest answer so that you're closest as close as possible so you don't think you're wrong, right? Okay? Is everybody okay with that? How we feel about this? Good, good. Now, before we do number 3, I'm going to switch back over to your slides because I need to throw the one wrinkle in here that we have not talked. You knew there had to be one, right? Always. It wouldn't be fun if we didn't give you a wrinkle. So, I want to show you the one wrinkle, and I don't think it's too much of a wrinkle here. When you have, I'm going to blank this for a second, see. When you have a rate, actually, this way. When you look at that formula, it doesn't just say rate down there. I got something down there that I have conveniently ignored up to this point on your formula, right? What does it say right here? Times 100. And notice we have not done anything with that yet, have we? Okay. Notice we also have not been asking you yet to calculate the rate. So far, what 2 things in that formula have I asked you to calculate? The value or the tax bill, right? Not yet have we calculated a rate. That times 100 is there only for when they ask you for the rate. Because whatever, you remember when I said when you press the percent button on your calculator, what it was doing?
Divided by 100.
It was dividing by 100. When you use the T-bar to get to a rate, to get back to the actual rate, what do you think you have to do? You got to multiply by 100. You got to undo that percentage change. Does that make sense? So whenever you're asked to calculate a rate, it's the only time you do it. Don't do it every time. Just when you're asked for the rate, you're going to take whatever answer comes out and you're going to multiply by what? 100. Everybody with me on that? So if I ask you, how do you calculate the North Carolina tax rate? What would you say to do? You would do, how do you calculate the rate? What two things are you left with? Don't forget how you learned the T-bar. It's going to be what? Bill divided by assessed value times 100.
I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into it, right? But could you just take the property tax bill? I got the same answer as possible. Property tax bill divided by the assessed value percentage. So like, let's say the question is going to be 429,000. Can I just say 429,000%? It's going to give you basically the same answer, right?
Should. Yeah, it should, because it's doing the divided by 100 on the other side. Yeah, so you could do it that way too.
Just kind
if you wanted
of
to.
do that shortcut. If it's going
You
to be
can do
by
it.
100, right?
Absolutely.
Cool little trick.
That'll work. That'll work. That'll work. Everybody understand what we got going on here? So just when you calculate the rate, it's the only time you do it, right? Whatever the final answer your calculator throws out, you're going to quickly hit what? Times 100, and then that's your answer. All right. So that being said, let's look at this number 3. You have a question, Pat?
No.
I thought I saw something bubbling there.
Yes, it is, but go ahead.
Okay. All right. So let's look at this number 3 now. On number 3, it says, what is the ad valorem tax rate for a property located in Garner? Well, again, I'm going to stop right there, and at first, I'm going to write down my T-bar. Now, folks, this seems silly to do right now because every question is using the same formula. When you get to the final exam, you ain't going to know which question is coming in which formula. So you need to get in the habit of writing the formula down every time you do one of these questions. When I see it and they're asking me for what is the ad valorem tax rate, I still know there's only how many formulas that have that in there. It's just one. It's the one we've been working with. So I'm going to write down that same formula. Tax bill over assessed value times rate. Okay? And then what are they asking me for here? What is the rate? So here's what we're trying to calculate. All right. So what's the ad valorem tax rate for property located in Garner if a house has an annual tax bill of $47.85? Go ahead and write that in. Do you like this idea of writing it in as you come across it, so you're not trying to sort it all out at the end?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And the assessed value of the property is $429,000. We're going to write that in down here. So, now, set it up for me in an equation. What does the T-bar say we're going to punch into the calculator? 4785 divided by 429,000. Right? So, type that into my calculator. 4785 divided by 429,000. And I come up with 0.01115538. Something like that, right? And what did I say I'm always going to do but only when I'm being asked for the rate? Times 100. So just keep it in my calculator and hit times 100. And now I have 1.11538. And I can either say that as percent, or what do you think it's going to be listed on as a test since they asked me for an ad valorem tax rate? How do you think that's going to be listed on the test? It's going to be listed as 1.11538%, or is it going to be listed as dollars per 100? So how do I make that into dollars per 100? I write down a dollar sign and I write what? 1.11 or 1.12 if you want to round per 100. That's how that would be listed on the test as an answer choice. And don't worry if you wrote $1.11 or if you wrote $1.12. Either one of them's fine, because again on the test it's not going to be that close. They only give you one. They're not going to give you both choices. Now don't freak out if you've got $1.11 and they got $1.12. Don't choose $1.76. I mean, that always perplexes me why people do that. Well, they didn't have my answer. No, but they had one that was a penny off. Choose that one.
Yeah.
That's the one I would have gone.
No, I chose $600 million. Just seemed logical at that point. Right? Yes, I missed it. How do we feel about this? I'm calculating a rate. Okay? Alright? So, let's look and see what else we got in this little packet here. Alright. I want you to work on numbers 4, 5, and 6. Okay? I want you to work on numbers 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to give you a quick note, and I'm going to blank the project, and of course I'll put them up here. Also, if you need help, flag me down. I will figure out how to, I'll knock somebody out of the way. We'll squeeze in there one way or the other. I will get there and help you, okay? So I want you to do 4, 5, and 6. Before you do 4, zone in on me for just a second, okay? I know we all do that, right? I do the same thing. That's why I know how you are, because I know how I am. I know how much I hate sitting out there, too. I'm the worst student in the world. On number 4, it gives you 2 tax rates. It says the property is located in Wake Forest, okay? And then it gives you a Wake County tax rate and a Wake Forest City tax rate. Which rate or rates do you think a property located in the city is going to be subject to? Both. Isn't stuff located in Wake Forest City also located in Wake County?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. You're going to pay both. Why do you think city taxes are higher than county taxes? Because you get the county taxes plus whatever additional the city charges you. So, if you're subject to both taxes, what do you think the easiest way to handle that on a test question is? Right? Add them together. And don't think of adding something crazy like percentages. Can you add 66 cents and 35 cents? Most of you can. Do it that way. Do it that way. Okay? So work on 4, 5, and 6. And did you need anything?
No, I was just clarifying exactly what you said.
Okay.
So Wake Forest is the county and Wake Forest is the city?
Correct. Wake Forest is the city,
Okay,
and Wake County is the county.
but it's not a standalone city. I just want to, I don't live in this area, so
What do you mean a standalone city?
where you're not subject to county taxes. So
There would be no such thing in North Carolina.
Okay.
In North Carolina, you're always subject to the county tax rate,
Okay,
and then additionally, it would be the city tax rate.
okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. If I can stop you for just a second. Also pay close attention in number 4. Remember, the value that's in the formula is the assessed value, right? Does it tell you something about the assessed value in this question? It says that it's what?
95%.
95% of, what does of mean when we're dealing with percentages? Multiply, right? So that means you need to multiply that sales price times 95% to get to your assessed value, correct? Okay.
Leftover donuts, we'll put them in this room over here. You all get a break.
Thank you. Don't go eat the donuts. It's math. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. Start. Down 100. Start on 100, right? Rid of all that. Now, could you increase or decrease? Okay, so it's got like a plus or minus. So like a plus. And what you need? Right, now 12. Do that now. Percent. That's your new percentage. Your started at 100%, and went up by 12%, so 104% of what number? So write that down. Of 5, and then how would you punch that into a calculator? You have to put what number first? There you go. You got it. I went around. I just write that down. But it's the same, yeah, you're right. This one, right? Okay, 'cause you got that number written down. That's when you did it for, I said, mark that down. This one's right. Don't round on that last one. You did it right, but don't round. Just write it down, okay? We ready to look at them? Anybody want me to look at theirs first? I got a question before I show it up here. Good? Good. All right. So this is number 4. On number 4, they want us to calculate what? Tax bill, right? And we had to go all the way to the final sentence to figure out what the heck they were asking us for, right? So one of the things I do when I do math questions is I'm not reading for content when I'm going through. What do you think I'm reading looking for?
Numbers.
I'm looking, not even numbers yet. What am I looking through in the first pass? What's the question? What the heck do you want to know? Because that's going to tell me what formula to write down. Okay? So when I see they want to know a tax bill, I'm writing this formula down and I'm circling or highlighting tax bill. So, to calculate the tax bill, I know I'm going to have the assessed value and the rate. So now I start to read back through, and now I'm looking specifically at the numbers. And what they tell me with the numbers is, we've got a Wake Forest property which has tax rates for 66 cents per 100 in Wake County and 35 cents per 100 in Wake Forest, right? So what'd you do with those two numbers? We added them together, and what'd you come up with? $1.01, right? 101, which is the same as 1.01%. Did everybody get to that point? Okay? So you got a rate of 1.01%. The only other catch here was that they didn't just give you the assessed value. But knowing what we know, they almost put it right into a formula for us, didn't they? Because they said 95% of sales price. And we know that anytime we see some percentage of something, what are we doing? Multiplying. So you just multiply 95% times the sales price, right? We have to put the sales price in first, we know in the calculator, but 390,000 times 95%. How many of you did that? Okay, so you got an assessed value of $370,500, and if you plug that in and multiply times 1.01%, you come up with $3,742.05. I'm going to say 5 nickels, but that would be 25 cents. How do we feel about that one? That is very much in line with what you could expect to see on the final exam for a property tax question. So if you can do that question, that is the level of question. Notice it's more information and more detailed than you were previously getting, but it didn't get any harder, did it? There were a couple of other little steps along the way. You had to add 2 tax rates together, and you had to calculate the assessed value. But did anybody find it like too daunting? I hope you didn't. If you did, make sure you talk to me about it, because we want to get you nailed down. But this is a good example of the kind you could expect to see on a test with regard to this. Okay? All right. Then number 5. Calculate the assessed value of a home, which was previously valued at $276,500, but saw the assessed value rise by, I usually say when somebody's phone rings, they have to buy donuts, but since they're free out there, that doesn't do much good. But saw its assessed value rise by 12% at the last octennial reappraisal. So this is a perfect example of don't get too caught up in doing the same thing repetitively, right? Is this going to be the same T-bar formula again? Or is this what we talked about earlier when we were raising and lowering things by percentages? Right?
Yeah, but I got caught up in the T-bone.
Yeah, and so that's what, and so that's okay. That's okay.
Two-chart.
If you memorize the T-bars, that won't happen, right? If you memorize the T-bars, that won't happen because when you see assessed value, okay, you wrote down the T-bar. What other two things did you need to know for it to work to calculate the assessed value like that way? You needed to know rate and bill, and they didn't give you anything to get there, did they? So we got to look at a different direction. But they did give us an old assessed value, right? And they told us how much it had done what? Appreciated, right? So Carolyn, let me ask you this question. Here's how I know how you know how to do this math, right? You have a child?
Yes.
Okay, boy or girl?
Boy.
How old?
20.
20, okay. So when he was growing, if I said he's 5'6" last year and he grew by 3 inches this year, could you tell me how tall he is right now?
Okay.
Could you?
Yes.
Same thing here, right? They told me how big it was last year and they told me what? How much it went up. They just happened to tell me how much it went up in percentages rather than dollars. But we know we can deal with that, right? Because what percentage does anything start at before we start raising or lowering it? 100%. It starts at 100%. And in this case, is it going up or down by the 12%? It's going up, so that's what I did. I started it at 100 and raised it by 12. So what do we end up with? 112% of the number we started with, which is 276.5. And so I punched that in the calculator as 276.5 times 112%, and that gives me an answer of 309,680. The highlights look better up here. I'm gonna have to stop doing that because it just looks like I marked it out over here. Over here it looks like I highlighted it. Over there it looks like I've tried to mark through it. Okay? How do we do on that? Okay? Yes, go ahead, then. Sorry.
I did it a different way.
You did it a different way. Okay, what'd you do? You multiply times 12%,
Yeah,
and then added it. You can do that. You can do that. That's fine. That's fine. You should be an attorney. Because they always find that the way it takes most steps and bill people the most money. Doing the same thing. But it works. I mean, I don't want you to get out of a comfort zone. If you got a comfort zone, can you take calculate 12%, and then add it back to it? Because what are you really doing? You're adding the 100% to the 12%. We're just doing it on the front end with the percentages. It's the same exact thing. It doesn't matter which way you want to do it. Okay? And then on number 6, it said, what's the new tax rate in Wake County if the County Board of Commissioners voted to lower the rate by 7% from its previous level of $1.15 per 100? So, it started at what level? What was the old level? $1.15, okay. And what percentage is that? It's always 100%, right? Anytime we start raising or lowering things, and in this case, what did it do? It went down by 7%. So what percentage does that leave us with? 93%, right? Okay, so if we write that out, it is 93% of what we started with, which was $1.15. So that's just $1.15 times 93%, which leaves us with 1.0695, $1.06, $1.07.
So we're not rounding on these? Or
I would not recommend not rounding. You're not going to be wrong because of rounding, but as we get later, if you get in the habit of doing it now, it really does throw you off later on.
So in the test, are they looking for rounding or no?
And they're looking for a final answer that's rounded. Here's what happens though. When I tell you it's okay to round, you know what you start doing? Every single time, like every number, like. And next thing I know, you're like, oh, 150,000, that's 200,000. You know, like, it gets crazy out of control with the rounding. And so I've just learned no rounding. It works better. And then round it to whatever they say for their final answer. Because a lot of times they'll say round it to the nearest $100 or round it to the nearest, $10 or something like that. And you can always do that at the end. But along the way, it's better if you don't.
Okay, thank you.
Is it wrong to do, or will this not get me eventually to the right answer?
Oh, you took the supreme shortcut.
I did.
She took the supreme. Now, do y'all want to know the supreme shortcut?
I thought that was.
I'll ask it. No, it's not wrong. Do y'all want to know the real quick shortcut? Because there's even a faster way to do this. But some of your calculators won't do it. So this is where you have to check your calculator to see if it works in this way. I want you to type something into your calculator. Okay, everybody take your calculator and type $1.15, 1.15 minus 7%.
That's what I did.
How many of you got 1.0695? Now look around at the number of hands that are not up.
Wow.
That's the reason I don't teach it that way, because not every calculator works that way. If your alright, so here's what I'm going to say. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way if your calculator works that way. Here's the problem. What if your calculator breaks on test day and I give you a replacement and it doesn't work that way? That's why I don't teach it that way. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with you doing it that way as long as you feel 100% comfortable your calculator is going to last the rest of your existence in this class. Okay? Because and there's really no rhyme. I've never been able to figure out how to predict which calculators would do it and which ones won't. If yours does it, great. If yours doesn't, then you need to do it the way I'm doing it.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what is the new tax rate? I circled that for my question that I'm looking for.
Yep.
It's like how many times we're lower the rate by 100%, so I circled lower instead of minus, not show my brain.
Yep.
So its previous level is $1.15 per 100, so I just added a rose 1.15%. I don't know if it's like I wrote the information down, but I don't know what it's doing.
Okay, so anytime you start talking about raising or lowering, you always have to remember, take away from 100, okay?
So I got one down to 3%.
Yep, and where'd you start with? What was your starting point? What raised or lowered? You had to have a starting point. What are you raising or lowering?
I use that at work every single day. It's like I know how.
The rate, right? You're raising or lowering the rate, okay? And what did the rate start at? No, 100%, but what did it start at? What was the actual rate? Right, that's what the rate was, and that's what they changed, right? The thing that got changed is that rate. So you go back and you apply that new percentage to the thing that got changed, right? So it's going to be 1.15, because that's the thing that changed, times the new rate, which is 93%.
That's what it is.
Okay? All right? Y'all need a little break?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break. Come back in 10 minutes.
Yeah.